The stairwell was full of smoke and the sound of a man singing. He was 62 years old, a bullhorn in one hand, a walkie-talkie in the other. Steel was failing above his head, and he was walking down 44 flights of stairs, singing a song from a Cornish mining town 3,000 miles away. 2,700 people were moving down those stairs because he told them to. The building's own loudspeakers had just told them to stay at their desks. He knew better. He had been warning them for 11 years. September 11th, 2001. The South Tower of the World Trade Center. The man with the bullhorn was head of security for Morgan Stanley, the largest tenant in the complex. Before that, a colonel. Before that, a platoon leader in the first major battle American soldiers fought in Vietnam. Before that, a boy in a Cornish fishing town who watched American soldiers march past his window in 1943 and decided that was what he wanted to be. He was not born an American, he chose it. And on the last morning of his life, he spent every minute of it on other people. This is Echoes of Valor X. Today we tell the true story of Rick Rescorla. He was born on the 27th of May, 1939 in Hale, Cornwall, a harbour town on the western edge of England. In 1943, the war came to Hale. The 175th Infantry Regiment of the United States 29th Infantry Division made the town its headquarters. They were men from Maryland and Virginia, training for the invasion of Normandy. To a 4-year-old boy, they were the tallest, loudest, most generous men he had ever seen. Many of them would not come back from that beach. He never forgot them. At 16, he left school and left Hale. He volunteered for the British Army rather than wait to be conscripted, trained as a paratrooper, and served with an intelligence unit in Cyprus. Then 3 years as a police inspector in northern Rhodesia, where he met an American named Daniel Hill. That friendship would last 40 years, and it would matter more than either man could have known. In 1963, he arrived in the United States with almost nothing and lived in a YMCA hostel in Brooklyn until the Army would take him. Fort Dix, Officer Candidate School and Airborne Training at Fort Benning. The boy from Hale finally had the uniform. The Army sent him to Vietnam. The Ia Drang Valley in the Central Highlands. November 1965. Rescorla was a platoon leader in the 2nd Battalion 7th Cavalry Regiment, 1st Cavalry Division, Air Mobile. This was the first major engagement between American forces and the North Vietnamese Army. He was 26 years old. His men called him Hardcore. He called his platoon Hardcore. When the shooting stopped and the waiting began, the part that breaks men faster than combat does, Rescorla did something no manual recommended. He sang Cornish songs from his childhood and an Australian ballad called The Wild Colonial Boy, so that frightened 19-year-olds lying in the dark would hear a calm voice and know someone was still in control. Hal Moore, who would write the definitive account of that battle, called Rescorla the best platoon leader he ever saw. He came home with a silver star, a bronze star with oak leaf cluster, a purple heart, and the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. He also came home in a photograph, moving forward with his bayonet fixed, mud on his face, eyes locked on something ahead of him. In 1992, it became the cover of We Were Soldiers Once and Young. Rescorla never read the book. When he saw his own face on the jacket, he set it down. When they turned it into a film, he told his wife he had no intention of watching it. He gave one reason, and he gave it only once. Rescorla said, "The real heroes are dead." He spent the next 34 years making sure fewer men ever had to become one. He left active duty in 1967 and did something no one expected of a man they called Hardcore. He used the GI Bill to take a master's in English literature and a law degree, then taught criminal justice at the University of South Carolina. He stayed in uniform part-time, reaching colonel in the Army Reserve before retiring in 1990. In 1985, he took a corporate security job with Dean Witter Reynolds in the World Trade Center. In 1988, a bomb brought down Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, and Rescorla started thinking about the towers. In 1990, he asked Daniel Hill, now trained in counterterrorism, to come to New York and look at the building the way an enemy would. Hill asked to see the basement. They walked down into the parking garage. Nobody stopped them. Nobody asked who they were. Hill pointed at a load-bearing column and said it was a soft touch. He would drive a truck full of explosives in, walk out, and light it off. They wrote a report to the Port Authority demanding the garage be secured. The fix was expensive. The report was ignored. On February 26, 1993, a truck bomb went off in that basement, roughly 30 feet from the column they had pointed at 3 years before. Here's where it gets strange. Being proved right did not satisfy him. It frightened him, because he had already worked out what came next. He told Morgan Stanley the towers would be struck again, next time by an aircraft flown into the building, and recommended the firm leave Manhattan entirely. The lease ran until 2006. The answer was no, so he did the only thing left to him. Every 3 months, without warning, he ran a full evacuation drill. All 22 floors, every employee, senior executives included. Down the stairwell 2 by 2, no elevators, timed with a stopwatch. Some of the most powerful men in American finance resented being marched down 44 flights by a security man with a Cornish accent. He ran those drills for 8 years, and he ran them while dying. In 1994, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. By 1998, it had reached his bone marrow. Injections into his stomach every month. 8:46 in the morning. American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower. Rescorla was at his desk on the 44th floor of the South Tower. He heard it and looked out at the other building burning. Then the Port Authority announcement came over the public address system. Everyone in the South Tower should stay where they were. Their building was secure. Rescorla picked up his bullhorn. He had been rehearsing this exact morning for 8 years. Roughly 2,700 Morgan Stanley employees in the South Tower and 1,000 more in a neighboring building started down the stairs. At 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower, the aircraft attack he had predicted. Into the building he had begged his company to leave. He kept them moving and off the elevators. And in the smoke, exactly as he had done in the Ia Drang Valley 36 years before, he sang. Rescorla said, "Men of Cornwall, stand ye steady. It cannot be ever said ye for the battle were not ready. Stand and never yield." Between songs, he called his wife Susan. Rescorla said, "Stop crying. I have to get these people out safely. If something should happen to me, I want you to know I've never been happier. You made my life." She told him he had made hers. Then the line went quiet. Almost every one of those 2,700 people reached the street. Rescorla turned around and went back in. A colleague told him he had to get out. He said he would, as soon as he made sure everyone else was. He was last seen on the 10th floor, climbing. At 9:59, the South Tower came down. Of roughly 2,700 Morgan Stanley employees, 13 did not come home. Rescorla was one. So were his deputies, Wesley Mercer and Jorge Velasquez, and a security guard named Godwin Ford. Every one of them had stayed behind for the same reason. His remains were never identified. 5 months earlier, the Army had selected him for the Infantry Officer Candidate School Hall of Fame. He never made it to the ceremony. He had asked to be cremated and his ashes carried home to Hale. There was nothing to carry. So in late October, his wife and a few friends held a small service. Susan recited The White Rose, a Cornish song he loved. A hawk that had been nursed back to health was released into the air. Today there is a statue of him at the National Infantry Museum in Georgia, and a National Resilience Award carries his name. At the September 11th Memorial in New York, he is on panel S46 of the South Pool. In 2019, He was given the Presidential Citizens Medal, 18 years late. He was a boy from a Cornish harbor town who watched American soldiers march off toward Normandy and decided he would earn the right to stand beside them. He spent his whole life earning it. And on the last morning he spent all of it getting other people down the stairs. America still stands because of men like this. Subscribe so these men are never forgotten.